and Florence, a city known for its beauty, its art, its fierce spirit. But beneath that beautiful veneer, something else often stirred, a profound obsession with death. And when the most powerful family in Florence, the Medici, said goodbye to one of their own, it was never just a funeral. It was a production, a spectacle so grand it made Hollywood blockbusters look like a backyard puppet show. We are talking about events so elaborate, so expensive, so mind-bogglingly over the top, they redefined what it meant to mourn. Forget black suits and a quiet ceremony. The Medici turned grief into an art form, a political statement, and a city-wide transformation. Get ready to witness 7 of the most jaw-dropping, awe-inspiring, utterly wild funeral extravaganzas history ever recorded. Number 1, Ferdinando II de' Medici. The air in Florence hung heavy, and still on that day in May of the year 1670. A pall of quiet solemnity had settled over the Grand Ducal Palace and spread through the streets. Grand Duke Ferdinando II de' Medici, ruler of Tuscany for 50 years, had finally succumbed to a long illness. His passing marked the end of an era, a reign that had seen moments of scientific brilliance, the founding of academies, and the patronage of art, even if the family's overall power was on a slow glacial decline. But declining power did not mean declining spectacle when it came to a Medici farewell. The funeral of Ferdinando II would be a magnificent and elaborate affair, a testament to the family's enduring image and their understanding of public presentation, even in death. Preparations for the Grand Duke's final journey began immediately, overseen by the most skilled artists and craftsmen of the Florentine court. The primary location chosen for the grandest part of the ceremony was the Basilica of San Lorenzo, the traditional mausoleum of the Medici family. This vast church, already rich with architectural and sculptural masterpieces, was to be entirely transformed for the occasion. Every surface that could be covered was draped in black velvet and heavy broadcloth embroidered with silver and gold threads. The Medici coat of arms, the 6 balls, were stitched into the somber fabric at frequent intervals, reminding everyone of the dynasty's omnipresence. The nave of San Lorenzo became a theatrical stage for the catafalque, the elaborate funeral structure. This was not a simple bier, it was a towering architectural monument crafted from wood, plaster, and stucco, meticulously painted to resemble black marble and bronze. It rose multiple stories high, reaching almost to the vaulted ceiling of the basilica. Its base was adorned with allegorical figures representing virtues Ferdinando was said to possess, such as justice, prudence, and fortitude. Each figure was sculpted with dramatic drapery and expressive faces, seemingly locked in eternal sorrow. Above these, reliefs depicted scenes from Ferdinando's life, not mundane historical events, but idealized moments portraying his wisdom, his military prowess, and his devoutness. These scenes were carefully chosen to reinforce the image of a benevolent and capable ruler. Candles, thousands upon thousands of them, were arrayed on every level of the catafalque, in ornate silver sconces and candelabra. When lit, their flickering flames would cast dancing shadows across the draped walls and illuminate the sculpted figures, creating a haunting and ethereal glow. Around the catafalque, massive silver torches, each holding multiple thick wax torches, stood sentinel, further contributing to the intense light and the pervasive smell of beeswax. The air would have been thick with the heat and the scent of burning wax, mixed with the faint aroma of incense. The procession itself was a carefully choreographed display of hierarchy and power. On the day of the funeral, the Grand Duke's body, or an effigy if the body had already been interred in a preliminary private ceremony, was moved through the streets of Florence. The route was lined with onlookers, many dressed in mourning black, their faces solemn. The procession began with various religious orders, each carrying their distinctive banners and crosses, chanting prayers. Following them came the representatives of the Florentine guilds, each guild with its own banner, signifying the city's economic backbone. Then came the Florentine nobility, dressed in their finest dark garments, their faces grave, their family crests subtly displayed on their capes or jewelry. The military contingent followed, a detachment of the Grand Ducal Guard in their sombre uniforms, their pikes and halberds gleaming dully. The sound of muffled drums set a slow, measured pace. Priests, bishops, and archbishops, robed in black and purple vestments, walked slowly, swinging censers that released plumes of fragrant smoke into the cool morning air. The most prominent members of the Medici family, led by the new Grand Duke, Cosimo III, followed directly behind the coffin, their faces betraying a mix of grief and the weight of new responsibilities. The coffin itself was a magnificent piece, covered in black velvet, embroidered with gold and silver, carried on the shoulders of 12 noblemen, or perhaps on a specially constructed funeral carriage drawn by black-plumed horses. When the procession finally reached San Lorenzo, the sheer scale of the internal transformation would have struck everyone. The dark drapes absorbed the light, making the thousands of candles on the catafalque even more dazzling. The vast space was filled with the sounds of a specially commissioned requiem mass, performed by the finest musicians of the court. The music, somber and majestic, echoed through the hallowed halls, accompanied by the low rumble of a grand organ. Eulogies were delivered, praising Ferdinando II's virtues and his reign, a carefully crafted narrative designed to secure his legacy. The ceremony lasted for hours, a long, drawn-out ritual of mourning, remembrance, and the reaffirmation of the Medici dynasty. After the public service, the coffin was taken to the new sacristy, Michelangelo's masterpiece, or perhaps the magnificent Chapel of the Princes, the vast dome mausoleum that was still under construction, but already intended for the Grand Ducal burials. Ferdinando II was eventually laid to rest within the family crypt, joining generations of his ancestors in a final, eternal sleep, surrounded by the enduring legacy of Medici power and the memory of a funeral that had turned an entire city into a stage for their grief. Number 2, Francesco I de' Medici. The hot, humid air of October 1587 carried whispers of a terrible mystery through Florence. Grand Duke Francesco I de' Medici and his beloved second wife Bianca Capello had both died suddenly, just hours apart, at the Medici villa of Poggio a Caiano. The official cause was malaria, a common and deadly illness of the time. But the swiftness of their deaths and the undeniable tensions within the Medici court fueled dark rumors of poison whispered by many. Despite the lingering unease, the duty of a grand ducal funeral, a colossal display of power and remembrance, fell to Francesco's younger brother, Cardinal Ferdinando de' Medici, who now became the new Grand Duke Ferdinando I. He would ensure his brother received a send-off that was nothing short of extraordinary, designed to solidify his own new position and assert the dynasty's unwavering strength, even in the face of tragedy and scandal. The preparations for Francesco's funeral immediately consumed the resources of the Florentine court. The chosen venue for the main ceremony was once again the Basilica of San Lorenzo, the Sacred Heart of Medici power. The entire church was to undergo a dramatic transformation, a temporary architectural marvel of mourning. Black velvet, rich and heavy, was ordered in vast quantities to drape every column, every arch, every wall. Silver and gold thread, painstakingly embroidered, wove the Medici crest and symbols of mourning into the dark fabric, creating a tapestry of sorrow and dynastic pride. The effect was meant to be overwhelming, a profound shift from the usual grandeur of the church to an almost oppressive solemnity. The centerpiece of this somber theatrical space was the catafalque. It was an ambitious structure designed to convey the immense loss and the majesty of the deceased Grand Duke. Towering high above the nave, constructed from wood and plaster, it was meticulously painted to mimic the look of black marble and dark bronze. Its design was complex, featuring multiple tiers adorned with allegorical figures representing virtues like truth, diligence, and constancy, virtues often associated with good rulers, even if Francesco's reign had been marked by some controversy. At the base of the structure, large, sculpted lamenting figures were positioned, their faces contorted in expressions of profound grief, adding to the dramatic atmosphere. Reliefs on the catafalque depicted scenes of Francesco's life, carefully curated to highlight his achievements, his patronage of the arts and sciences, and his dedication to the Tuscan state. These were not mere pictures, but sculptural narratives designed to elevate his legacy. The sheer volume of illumination for this event was staggering. Thousands upon thousands of large beeswax candles, specially crafted for the occasion, were arranged in elaborate candelabra and sconces on every level of the catafalque and throughout the church. Massive silver torches, each holding multiple thick, slow-burning torches, were placed around the structure, casting a fiery glow. When all were lit, the basilica would have been transformed into a cavern of flickering light and deep shadows, the air thick with the scent of hot wax and incense, creating an almost mystical environment of solemn tribute. On the day of the funeral, the streets of Florence were filled with a sense of anticipation and sorrow. The funeral procession was a monumental affair, a carefully orchestrated display of state power and public mourning. It began from the Pitti Palace, the Grand Ducal residence, and wound its way through the city's main thoroughfares, all draped in black and purple cloths. Leading the procession were various religious fraternities and orders, their members carrying banners and crucifixes, chanting hymns and prayers in low, resonant voices. They were followed by representatives of the city's guilds, each with their distinct symbols, and then by the Florentine nobility dressed in their most somber and formal attire, their faces grim. A contingent of the Grand Ducal Guard marched with measured steps, their weapons inverted as a sign of mourning. Behind them came the high-ranking clergy, bishops and archbishops in their ceremonial vestments, swinging censers that released fragrant clouds of incense into the air. The most prominent members of the Medici family, led by the new Grand Duke Ferdinando I, walked directly behind the coffin, their expressions betraying the gravity of the occasion. The coffin itself was an extraordinary piece of craftsmanship, covered in rich black velvet embroidered with intricate gold and silver designs and adorned with the Medici coat of arms. It was carried on the shoulders of 12 members of the highest nobility, a testament to the Grand Duke's status, or perhaps transported on a majestic, specially built funeral carriage drawn by 6 black horses, their heads adorned with black plumes. When the procession entered San Lorenzo, the sight would have been breathtaking. The vast church, shrouded in black, illuminated by the thousands of candles, created an atmosphere of profound reverence and solemnity. The sounds of a specially composed requiem mass filled the space, performed by the finest musicians and singers from the Grand Ducal court, their voices soaring through the vaulted ceilings, accompanied by the deep, resonant tones of the church's grand organ. Elaborate eulogies were delivered, praising Francesco's contributions, his reign, and his place in the illustrious line of the Medici. The ceremony was a meticulously planned theatrical event, designed to reinforce the legitimacy of the new Grand Duke and the stability of the Medici state, even as whispers of foul play lingered in the city's shadows. After the public ceremony, the coffin was taken to the new sacristy, the Chapel of the Princes within San Lorenzo, a magnificent mausoleum still under construction but already intended for the Grand Dukes. Francesco I was laid to rest within the family crypt, his final resting place, a silent testament to a reign that ended in mystery and a funeral that was a testament to the Medici's unwavering commitment to public spectacle and their enduring power. Number 3. Cosimo, the first dei Medici. The year is 1574. Florence felt the tremors of a monumental shift. Cosimo I de' Medici, the man who had transformed the Florentine Republic into the Grand Duchy of Tuscany, the stern, ambitious, and incredibly powerful ruler, had died. For 37 years he had held the reins of power with an iron grip, centralizing authority, creating a modern state, and crushing any opposition. His death was not just the passing of a duke, it was the end of an era, and his funeral was destined to be a statement of the enduring power and prestige of the Medici dynasty he had so skillfully forged. His son, Francesco I, the new Grand Duke, knew that his father's final rites needed to be nothing short of magnificent, a grand display of state sorrow and dynastic succession. The preparations for Cosimo I's funeral were on an unprecedented scale, transforming the entire city into a theater of mourning. The main event was to take place in the Basilica of San Lorenzo, the heart of Medici reverence. The interior of the vast church was completely draped in black from floor to ceiling. Not just simple fabric, but vast quantities of the finest black velvet and broadcloth, richly embroidered with silver and gold threads. The Medici coat of arms, along with symbols of death and immortality like skulls, crossbones, and phoenixes, were woven into the somber drapery, creating a visually stunning, albeit mournful, environment. Every column, every archway, every chapel was covered, creating an overwhelming sense of solemnity and grandeur. The catafalque, the elaborate funeral structure, was the absolute centerpiece of this transformation. Designed by the court architect and artist Giorgio Vasari, it was a truly colossal undertaking. Rising multiple stories high in the center of the nave, it was constructed from wood and plaster, meticulously painted to imitate black marble and dark bronze. Its design incorporated complex architectural elements, including classical columns, cornices, and pediments, giving it the appearance of a temporary temple dedicated to the deceased Grand Duke. Allegorical figures, sculpted with dramatic flair, adorned its tiers, representing virtues such as justice, prudence, and fortitude, emphasizing Cosimo's qualities as a ruler. Interspersed among these figures were large-scale reliefs depicting scenes from Cosimo's life and reign, his military victories, his achievements in establishing academies and patronage of the arts, his wisdom in governing. These were not just decorations, they were propaganda, meticulously crafted to shape his historical legacy. The lighting for the ceremony was a spectacle in itself. Thousands upon thousands of candles, crafted from pure beeswax, were placed in ornate silver and gilt candelabra, arranged on every level of the catafalque and throughout the church. Massive silver torcheries, each holding multiple thick, slow-burning torches, were strategically positioned, creating an intense flickering glow. When all these illuminations were lit, the church would have been transformed into a cavern of light and shadow, the air heavy with the sweet, pervasive scent of hot wax and incense, contributing to a profound sensory experience of mourning. On the day of the funeral, the city of Florence was gripped by the event. The funeral procession was a meticulously orchestrated public display of the Grand Duke's importance and the city's grief. It began from the Palazzo Pitti, the Grand Ducal residence, and slowly wound its way through the main streets of Florence, which were themselves draped in black and purple mourning cloths. The procession was led by various religious orders, each carrying their distinctive banners and crucifixes, their members chanting prayers in a low, continuous murmur. They were followed by the representatives of Florence's powerful guilds, each bearing their banners, symbolizing the city's economic might. Then came the vast number of Florentine nobility, dressed in their finest dark garments, their faces solemn, their expressions a mixture of respect and perhaps a touch of apprehension for the new reign. A large contingent of the Grand Ducal Guard marched with slow, measured steps, their weapons reversed in a sign of mourning. Behind them came the high-ranking clergy, bishops, and archbishops, dressed in their richest black and purple vestments, swinging censers that released thick clouds of fragrant incense into the cool morning air. The most prominent members of the Medici family, including the new Grand Duke Francesco I, walked directly behind the coffin, their faces reflecting the gravity of the occasion. The coffin itself was a magnificent artifact, covered in rich black velvet embroidered with intricate gold and silver thread, adorned with the Medici coat of arms and symbols of sovereignty. It was carried on the shoulders of 12 high-ranking noblemen, or perhaps transported on a specially built, elaborately decorated funeral carriage drawn by 6 black horses, their heads adorned with somber black plumes. When the procession finally entered the transformed Basilica of San Lorenzo, the sheer scale of the interior decoration would have overwhelmed the senses. The dark drapes absorbed the light, making the thousands of candles on the catafalque shine even more brilliantly. The vast space was filled with the sounds of a specially composed requiem mass, performed by the finest musicians and singers from the Grand Ducal court. The music, somber and majestic, resonated through the hallowed halls, accompanied by the deep, resonant tones of the church's grand organ. Elaborate eulogies were delivered by prominent figures praising Cosimo's achievements, his wisdom, his strength, and his enduring legacy as the true founder of the Grand Duchy of Tuscany. The ceremony lasted for many hours, a long, drawn-out ritual of public mourning, remembrance, and the powerful affirmation of the Medici dynasty. After the public service, Cosimo I's body was taken to the new sacristy, the Medici Chapel, a masterwork of Michelangelo, or perhaps directly to the vast Chapel of the Princes, the family mausoleum he had begun building, even though it was still far from complete. He was laid to rest within the family crypt, joining generations of his ancestors, his final resting place a silent testament to his incredible ambition and the monumental funeral that had marked his passage from earthly power to historical legend. Number 4, Pope Clement VII Giulio de' Medici. The city of Rome, still reeling from the devastating sack of 1527, faced another moment of profound uncertainty in September 1534. Pope Clement VII, born Giulio de' Medici, had passed away after a long illness. His papacy had been a tumultuous one, marked by the Reformation's rise, the imperial invasion of Rome, and political maneuvers that had reshaped the face of Europe. Despite the challenges and controversies of his reign, Clement VII was still a pope, a Medici, and his funeral had to reflect the enduring majesty and universal significance of the papacy, even if the city itself was scarred and impoverished. The College of Cardinals, responsible for the papal interregnum, understood that the solemnity and grandeur of the funeral were paramount, not just for the deceased pontiff, but for the stability of the church itself. Preparations for Clement VII's funeral were swift and comprehensive, orchestrated by the highest ecclesiastical authorities in Rome. The primary location for the elaborate ceremonies was St. Peter's Basilica, even the older basilica, as the new one was still under construction. The vast interior of this sacred space was to be transformed into a grand hall of mourning. Massive quantities of black fabric, dark velvet, and rich broadcloth were draped from the towering columns and arches, covering the walls and chapels. These hangings were often embroidered with silver and gold, featuring papal symbols such as the keys of St. Peter, the papal tiara, and the Medici coat of arms, serving as a reminder of the powerful family from which the Pope had come. The sheer scale of the drapery was meant to be overwhelming, plunging the basilica into a somber, almost oppressive darkness, broken only by the intense light of thousands of candles. The catafalque, the central funeral structure, was a monumental artistic and architectural creation, rising to an immense height in the nave of St. Peter's. Constructed from wood and stucco, it was painted to resemble dark marble and precious metals. Its design incorporated complex classical elements, columns, pedestals, and cornices, creating the impression of a temporary triumphal arch or a grand temple dedicated to the Pope. Allegorical figures representing virtues like faith, hope, and charity, as well as personifications of the Church and the Papal States, were sculpted in dramatic poses expressing sorrow and reverence. Bas reliefs adorn the sides, depicting significant events from Clement VII's life, carefully chosen to highlight his piety, his efforts for peace, and his resilience in the face of adversity, even if history recalled a more complex reality. The illumination was a central part of the spectacle. Thousands upon thousands of large, specially made beeswax candles were arranged in towering candelabra and ornate sconces on every tier of the catafalque and throughout the vast basilica. Gigantic silver torches, each holding multiple thick, slow-burning torches, were positioned around the structure, casting a fiery, flickering glow. When all these candles and torches were lit, the interior of St. Peter's would have been transformed into a breathtaking scene of light and shadow, the air thick with the pervasive scent of hot wax and incense, creating an almost otherworldly atmosphere of reverence and mourning. On the day of the funeral, the city of Rome, despite its recent hardships, swelled with a sense of solemn duty and curiosity. The funeral procession was an immense undertaking, a carefully choreographed display of spiritual and temporal power. It typically began from the Castel Sant'Angelo, where the Pope's body had lain in state, and proceeded through the city's historic streets towards St. Peter's. The route would have been lined with onlookers, many dressed in mourning black, their faces solemn. The procession was led by countless religious orders, each carrying their distinctive banners and crucifixes, chanting Latin hymns and prayers. They were followed by representatives of the various Roman confraternities, the civic nobility, and the ambassadors from European powers, all dressed in formal mourning attire. A detachment of the papal guard, dressed in their somber uniforms, marched with slow, measured steps, their halberds reversed. Behind them came the vast array of clergy, including bishops, archbishops, and cardinals, dressed in their rich black and purple vestments, swinging censers that released fragrant clouds of incense into the Roman air. The most senior cardinals, members of the College of Cardinals, walked directly behind the coffin, their expressions grave with the weight of the occasion and the impending conclave. The coffin itself was a magnificent piece of artistry, covered in rich black velvet, embroidered with intricate gold and silver designs, adorned with the papal keys and tiara. It was carried on the shoulders of 12 high-ranking noblemen or members of the Swiss Guard, a testament to the Pope's supreme spiritual and temporal authority, or transported on a majestic, specially constructed funeral carriage drawn by 6 black-plumed horses. When the procession entered the transformed St. Peter's Basilica, the impact would have been immediate and profound. The vast space, shrouded in black, illuminated by thousands of flickering candles, created an atmosphere of deep reverence and solemnity. The sounds of a specially composed Requiem Mass filled the basilica, performed by the finest musicians and singers from the papal choir. The music, solemn and majestic, echoed through the hallowed halls, accompanied by the deep, resonant tones of the church's grand organ. Elaborate eulogies were delivered by prominent figures, praising Clement VII's piety, his resilience, and his dedication to the church, crafting a powerful narrative of his papacy. The ceremony lasted for many hours, a long, drawn-out ritual of public mourning, remembrance, and the powerful affirmation of the enduring authority of the papacy. After the public ceremony, Clement VII's body was taken for burial. His initial burial place was in St. Peter's, but he was later moved to the church of Santa Maria sopra Minerva, where he lies next to his cousin, Pope Leo X. His final resting place was a silent testament to a papacy filled with challenges and triumphs, and a funeral that affirmed the enduring power and spectacle of the Roman Catholic Church, even in a time of profound upheaval. Number 5. Pope Leo X Giovanni de' Medici. The Eternal City was plunged into shock and grief in December 1521. Pope Leo X, born Giovanni de' Medici, the first Medici Pope, had died suddenly at the age of 46. His papacy had been a dazzling period of artistic and intellectual flourishing, a true golden age for Rome, filled with grand building projects, lavish banquets, and the patronage of giants like Raphael and Michelangelo. But it was also a time of deep spiritual unrest, with Martin Luther's challenge to the church growing louder. Leo X's unexpected death left a void, and the subsequent funeral, overseen by the College of Cardinals, had to be a breathtaking display of papal power and spiritual authority, a final grand spectacle for a pope who had lived his life on the grandest of stages. Preparations for Leo X's funeral began immediately, a massive undertaking that mobilized the resources of the entire Vatican. The primary location for the main ceremonies was St. Peter's Basilica, even the old one, as the magnificent new basilica was still under construction. The vast interior of this sacred space was to be utterly transformed into a cathedral of mourning. And immense quantities of black velvet and rich broadcloth were ordered and meticulously draped from the towering columns, along the arches, and over the walls and chapels. These somber hangings were often embroidered with gold and silver thread, featuring papal symbols like the keys of St. Peter, the papal tiara, and, prominently, the Medici coat of arms, reminding all of the Pope's powerful Florentine lineage. The effect was meant to be overwhelming, submerging the basilica in a profound, almost oppressive darkness, pierced only by the light of thousands of candles. The catafalque, the elaborate funeral structure, was the absolute masterpiece of this transformation. Designed by the finest artists and architects of the papal court, it rose to an immense height in the nave of St. Peter's. Constructed from wood, plaster, and stucco, it was intricately painted to resemble dark marble and gleaming bronze. Its design incorporated complex classical architectural elements such as fluted columns, ornate cornices, and dramatic pediments, creating the impression of a temporary monument of unparalleled grandeur. Allegorical figures, sculpted with dramatic dynamism, adorned its multiple tiers, representing virtues associated with the papacy, such as faith, justice, and piety, as well as personifications of the Church and the Papal States. Bas-reliefs were meticulously crafted to depict significant moments from Leo X's life, and papacy, his elevation to the papacy, his patronage of the arts, his efforts to promote peace, all carefully chosen to elevate his legacy. The sheer volume of illumination for this event was staggering. Thousands upon thousands of large, specially crafted beeswax candles were arranged in towering candelabra and ornate silver and gilt sconces on every level of the catafalque and throughout the entire basilica. Gigantic silver torches, each holding multiple thick, slow-burning torches, were strategically placed around the structure, casting a fiery, flickering glow. When all these candles and torches were lit, the interior of St. Peter's would have been transformed into a truly breathtaking scene of light and shadow, the air thick with the pervasive scent of hot wax and incense, creating an almost mystical and overwhelming atmosphere of reverence and sorrow. On the day of the funeral, the city of Rome was gripped by a solemn stillness. The funeral procession was an immense undertaking, a carefully choreographed display of spiritual and temporal power, reflecting the Pope's supreme authority. It typically began from the Vatican Palace, where the Pope's body had lain in state, and proceeded through the city's historic streets towards St. Peter's Basilica. The route would have been lined with vast crowds of onlookers, many dressed in mourning black, their faces solemn. The procession was led by countless religious orders, each carrying their distinctive banners and crucifixes, chanting Latin hymns and prayers in a low, resonant murmur. They were followed by representatives of the various Roman confraternities, the city's nobility, and the ambassadors from every major European power, all dressed in formal mourning attire, their presence signifying the universal reach of the papacy. A large detachment of the Swiss Guard and other papal military units, dressed in their somber uniforms, marched with slow, measured steps, their weapons inverted as a sign of respect. Behind them came the vast array of clergy, including bishops, archbishops, and, most prominently, the cardinals, dressed in their richest black and purple vestments, swinging censers that released thick clouds of fragrant incense into the Roman air. The most senior cardinals, members of the College of Cardinals, responsible for electing the next pope, walked directly behind the coffin, their expressions grave with the weight of the occasion and the immense responsibility of the upcoming conclave. The coffin itself was a magnificent piece of craftsmanship, covered in rich black velvet, embroidered with intricate gold and silver thread, adorned with the papal keys and tiara. It was carried on the shoulders of 12 high-ranking noblemen or members of the Swiss Guard, a powerful visual representation of the Pope's supreme spiritual and temporal authority, or transported on a majestic, specially constructed funeral carriage drawn by 6 black horses, their heads adorned with somber black plumes. When the procession entered the transformed St. Peter's Basilica, the impact would have been immediate and overwhelming. The vast space, shrouded in black, illuminated by thousands of flickering candles, created an atmosphere of profound reverence and solemnity. The sounds of a specially composed requiem mass filled the basilica, performed by the finest musicians and singers from the papal choir. The music, solemn and majestic, echoed through the hallowed halls, accompanied by the deep, resonant tones of the church's grand organ. Elaborate eulogies were delivered by prominent figures, praising Leo X's piety, his intellectual brilliance, his artistic patronage, and his dedication to the Church, carefully shaping the narrative of his controversial but undeniably magnificent papacy. The ceremony lasted for many hours, a long, drawn-out ritual of public mourning, remembrance, and the powerful affirmation of the enduring authority of the Roman Catholic Church. After the public ceremony, Leo X's body was taken for burial. His initial resting place was in the old St. Peter's Basilica, but he was later moved to the church of Santa Maria sopra Minerva, where he lies today. His final resting place was a silent testament to a papacy that combined immense spiritual authority with unparalleled cultural splendor, and a funeral that affirmed the enduring power and theatrical grandeur of the Roman Catholic Church and the Medici family. Number 6. Lorenzo de' Medici the Magnificent. Florence wept openly and collectively on that April day in 1492. Lorenzo de' Medici, known as the Magnificent, the undisputed master of the Florentine Republic, the poet, the statesman, the patron of arts and sciences, had died at the tragically young age of 43. His passing was not just the death of a powerful man, it was the end of Florence's golden age, a time of unparalleled cultural brilliance and political stability, largely orchestrated by his genius. The city had loved him, feared him, and depended on him. His funeral, therefore, had to be more than a simple burial. It had to be an expression of a city's profound grief, a testament to his extraordinary legacy, and a reaffirmation of the Medici family's continued, if now uncertain, dominance. The preparations for Lorenzo's funeral were immediate and extensive, mobilizing the entire city and its artistic resources. The primary location for the elaborate ceremonies was the Basilica of San Lorenzo, the church most intimately associated with the Medici family. The interior of the vast basilica was transformed for the occasion, though not yet with the later Baroque excess of the Grand Dukes. Instead, it was draped with black cloths and broadcloths, simple yet profoundly somber, creating a pervasive atmosphere of mourning. The Medici coat of arms was subtly woven into these drapes, a quiet reminder of whose patriarch had passed. The altars were stripped bare, and the usual colorful vestments of the clergy were replaced with their black mourning attire. The catafalque, the temporary funeral structure, was positioned prominently in the nave. While perhaps not as towering as later Grand Ducal catafalques, it was still a significant structure, designed to elevate Lorenzo's coffin and present it as the focus of the city's grief. It was likely constructed from wood, draped in black velvet, and adorned with symbolic elements relevant to Lorenzo's life. Instead of elaborate allegorical figures, there might have been simpler, perhaps carved or painted, emblems of his virtues, symbols of wisdom, artistry, and civic leadership. Candles, hundreds if not thousands of them, would have been placed around the catafalque and throughout the church, casting a soft, flickering light that deepened the shadows and intensified the solemn mood. The air would have been thick with the scent of beeswax and the faint aroma of incense. On the day of the funeral, the city of Florence was gripped by a profound stillness, broken only by the mournful tolling of bells from every campanile. The funeral procession was an immense public display of grief and honor, a meticulously organized movement through the city's streets. It began from the Palazzo Medici, the family's urban palace, and slowly wound its way through the main thoroughfares of Florence, which were themselves draped in black and purple cloths in places. The procession was led by various religious fraternities and orders, each carrying their distinctive banners and crucifixes, their members chanting Latin hymns and prayers in low, resonant voices. They were followed by representatives of Florence's powerful guilds, each bearing their banners, symbolizing the city's economic and social structure, their faces grim. Then came the vast number of Florentine nobility and prominent citizens, dressed in their finest dark garments, their faces marked by genuine sorrow and the weight of the moment. Ambassadors from foreign powers who had gathered in Florence to pay their respects to the man who had been a pivotal figure in Italian diplomacy also walked in the procession, their presence underscoring Lorenzo's international standing. The clergy of all ranks, from humble priests to high-ranking bishops, dressed in their black mourning vestments, walked slowly, swinging censers that released clouds of fragrant incense into the cool morning air. The most prominent members of the Medici family, including Lorenzo's eldest son and successor, Piero de' Medici, walked directly behind the coffin, their faces betraying their personal grief and the immense responsibility now placed upon their shoulders. The coffin itself was a magnificent, albeit somber piece, covered in rich black velvet and adorned with the Medici coat of arms. It was carried on the shoulders of 12 high-ranking noblemen or close family friends, a testament to Lorenzo's immense standing in Florentine society. The slow, measured pace of the procession was set by the muffled drums and the solemn chanting, creating an atmosphere of deep reverence and communal mourning. When the procession finally entered the transformed Basilica of San Lorenzo, the sight would have been profoundly moving. The vast space, shrouded in black, illuminated by the flickering candles, created an atmosphere of deep reverence and solemnity. The sounds of a specially composed requiem mass filled the basilica, performed by the finest musicians and singers from the Florentine court and the city's various churches. The music, somber and majestic, echoed through the hallowed halls. Elaborate eulogies were delivered by prominent humanists and orators, praising Lorenzo's unmatched intellect, his diplomatic genius, his incredible patronage of the arts, and his profound impact on the city of Florence. These were not just speeches, they were carefully crafted tributes designed to immortalize his legacy and solidify the Medici's unique place in the city's history. The ceremony lasted for many hours, a long, drawn-out ritual of public mourning, remembrance, and the powerful affirmation of the Medici family's enduring, if now challenged, grip on Florence. After the public service, Lorenzo's body was taken for burial in the new sacristy, the Medici Chapel within San Lorenzo, a testament to the family's vision, even though its most famous sculptural elements by Michelangelo had not yet been created. He was laid to rest, alongside his brother Giuliano, a silent testament to a reign that had brought unparalleled glory to Florence, and a funeral that was a testament to the city's profound love for its magnificent leader and the Medici's enduring theatrical grandeur. Number 7. Cosimo de' Medici Pater Patriae. The year is 1464. Florence held its breath. Cosimo de' Medici, known as Pater Patriae, or Father of the Country, the patriarch who had quietly but firmly established the Medici family's political and financial dominance over the Florentine Republic, had died at his villa in Careggi. For 30 years, he had been the true, if unofficial, ruler of Florence, orchestrating alliances, funding magnificent artistic projects, and building the family's immense banking fortune. His death was a monumental event, not just for his family, but for the entire city, which owed much of its stability and growing wealth to his shrewd leadership. His funeral, therefore, had to be a statement of profound respect, a grand acknowledgement of his unique place in Florentine history, and a powerful, visible reaffirmation of the Medici family's continued authority. The preparations for Cosimo's funeral were immediate and elaborate, overseen by his son Piero, and the city's leading citizens who recognized the need to honor such a pivotal figure. The primary location for the main ceremonies was the Basilica of San Lorenzo, the church that Cosimo himself had so generously funded and transformed with the genius of Filippo Brunelleschi and Donatello. The vast interior of this sacred space was draped in black cloths and dark broadcloth, creating a solemn and reverent atmosphere. These hangings were simpler than those of later centuries, reflecting the more understated, though still immensely wealthy, style of the early Medici. The Medici coat of arms might have been subtly incorporated into the drapes, a quiet yet firm declaration of the family's enduring presence. The altars were prepared for the many masses that would be said, and the usual festive decorations were removed, replaced by somber arrangements. The catafalque, the temporary funeral structure, was positioned prominently in the nave of San Lorenzo. It was likely constructed from wood and draped in black fabric, designed to elevate Cosimo's coffin and present it as the focal point of the city's mourning. While not yet the towering multi-tiered monuments of later Medici funerals, it would have been an imposing structure symbolizing the importance of the deceased. The candles, hundreds upon hundreds of them, were placed around the catafalque, and throughout the church, their flickering flames casting a soft, warm glow that contrasted with the deep shadows and heightened the solemn mood. The air would have been thick with the scent of beeswax, and the faint, sweet aroma of incense filling the vast space with a reverent perfume. On the day of the funeral, the entire city of Florence came to a standstill. The mournful tolling of church bells echoed across the rooftops, calling everyone to attention. The funeral procession was an immense public display of honor and collective grief, a meticulously organized movement through the city's main thoroughfares. It began from the Palazzo Medici, the family's urban residence, and slowly wound its way towards San Lorenzo. The streets along the route were lined with vast crowds of onlookers, many dressed in their darkest clothes, their faces solemn and respectful. The procession was led by various religious fraternities and monastic orders, each carrying their distinctive banners and crucifixes, their members chanting Latin hymns and prayers in a low continuous murmur. They were followed by representatives of Florence's powerful guilds, each bearing their banners, symbolizing the city's economic and social structure, their faces grim with the weight of the occasion. The city's prominent citizens, the nobility and members of the Signoria, the governing body of Florence, walked in their most formal and somber attire, their presence a testament to Cosimo's profound influence on all aspects of Florentine life. Ambassadors from foreign powers who had traveled to Florence to pay their respects to the man who had been a quiet but powerful force in Italian politics also walked in the procession, their presence underscoring Cosimo's international standing. Clergy of all ranks, from humble priests to high-ranking bishops, dressed in their black mourning vestments, walked slowly, swinging censers that released thick clouds of fragrant incense into the cool morning air. The most prominent members of the Medici family, including Cosimo's ailing son Piero and his grandson Lorenzo, walked directly behind the coffin, their faces reflecting their personal grief and the immense burden of continuing Cosimo's legacy. The coffin itself was a magnificent yet understated piece, covered in rich black velvet and adorned with the Medici coat of arms. It was carried on the shoulders of 12 high-ranking noblemen, or close family friends, a testament to Cosimo's immense standing in Florentine society. The slow, measured pace of the procession was set by the mournful tolling of bells and the solemn chanting, creating an atmosphere of deep reverence and communal mourning throughout the city. When the procession finally entered the transformed Basilica of San Lorenzo, the sight would have been profoundly moving. The vast space, shrouded in black, illuminated by the flickering candles, created an atmosphere of deep reverence and solemnity. The sounds of a specially composed Requiem Mass filled the basilica, performed by the finest musicians and singers from the Florentine court and the city's various churches. The music, solemn and majestic, resonated through the hallowed halls. Elaborate eulogies were delivered by prominent humanists and orators, praising Cosimo's unmatched wisdom, his quiet power, his incredible patronage of the arts, and his profound impact on the city of Florence. These were not just speeches, they were carefully crafted tributes designed to immortalize his legacy and solidify the Medici's unique place in the city's history. The ceremony lasted for many hours, a long, drawn-out ritual of public mourning, remembrance, and the powerful affirmation of the Medici family's enduring hold on Florence. After the public service, Cosimo's body was taken for burial in the sacristy of San Lorenzo, a testament to the family's deep connection to the church he had so lavishly supported. He was laid to rest beneath a simple marble slab bearing the inscription Pater Patriae, a title bestowed upon him by the grateful Florentines, a silent testament to a life that had quietly but profoundly shaped the destiny of Florence, and a funeral that was a powerful declaration of the Medici's unwavering presence in the city.